Hey everyone, Coomber Radio, episode number 278. Tom B is in the house. Tom B, we were at the Body Power Trade Expo a couple of weeks ago. Well, a couple of days ago, by the time they listen to this, a couple of weeks ago. And you had your baptism of fire on stage.
Yes, I did. It was my first ever public speaking gig, which was absolutely terrifying until I'd been from about 3 months prior until about a minute after I got on stage. And then after that it was fine. But that initial run up was just horrific. Lost sleep, I don't know. I never get nervous about anything, and I knew there was going to be 40 people in the room, but for some reason I got really nervous about it. It was weird.
What do you think it is that you got nervous about? Because obviously standing up in front of other people is definitely a fear I no longer have, but it's something that people do struggle with.
Yeah, I don't know with me, I'm not that bothered about speaking in front of lots of people. I don't know whether doing stuff like this podcast, I run a free Facebook group and I put a bunch of videos in there, so I'm alright with speaking to people. I think it was just, I did a talk on critical thinking to a bunch of personal trainers, and I think there was a lot of pressure on me to ensure that everyone knew that what I was talking about was actually relevant to them. So it was just that, making sure that the material actually matched the audience. There was quite a lot of pressure there, but other than that.
I am very upset I didn't get to make the talk, because the whole reason you talked on your own is because the show double booked us, and I had to be on one stage and you the other. So we kind of got stitched up, man.
It's fine. We'll just own the event. It's fine.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we have got some cool questions lined up. Oh, by the way, if people want to follow the musings of Tom on the interwebs, if you make sure you are following Body Type Nutrition on Facebook, and you are signed up to our email at bodytypenutrition.co.uk, you will get the musings of Tom. So Tom, as we've said, works within the academy, is kind of very much, the academy is a big part of what he does. And his extension of his brain is on the BTM platforms. An extension of my brain is a little bit in the BTM platforms, but my Facebook page, Ben Coomber, is very much where I'm talking about kind of what I'm doing and what I'm thinking and stuff. And Tom's brain is in BTN. So if you do want to follow Tom's stuff and get a lot of nutrition education, then make sure you're following Body Type Nutrition on the interwebs. So Tom, what have we got today? Questions. What's going down?
Alright, so we've got one very long question and then a shorter one. So we'll start with the big one. Hi Ben, I'm a long-time listener and a very big fan of both yourself and Rachel. I hope I'm a reasonable replacement. The work you do is brilliant. I've recommended your podcast to numerous people, as you previously helped me on the podcast where I was trying to gain mass to compete in a higher weight at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I achieved that goal by going from approximately 82.5 to 90 kilos over around a 2-year period. I'd like to thank you for the help. I'm extremely grateful. Some good progress. After achieving that goal, my priorities have changed from Jiu-Jitsu competition to my own personal physique. Jiu-Jitsu has become an enjoyable pastime, 2 to 3 nights a week for an hour, instead of a focus on competition. My new goals are to go from my current physique of 90 kilos at 19% body fat to 1. Reduce my body fat to approximately 10% to show my abs and have good definition, increase my arm size, increase my leg size, and finally enjoy the process. My dilemma. I've made good progress on muscle development by following the detailed split below with an emphasis on hypertrophy training. However, I received a setback as I obtained a grade 2 MCL tear in my right knee 4 weeks ago. This has put a stop to my jiu-jitsu and leg training for the past few weeks, and I've seen my body fat increase. As it's taken a long time for this to heal and I don't want to do any more damage, I have the following questions. Question 1. How do you deal with setbacks in general, and what advice would you have for all listeners? Question 2. How should I adapt my training and diet to maintain on the path for my goal while rehabbing my knee? Currently all my workouts are machine-based and seated/supported workouts as not to load my knee. 3. I've been using a concept called feeder workouts to grow my arms, which are executed on non-arm training days. The concept relates to active recovery. The program I'm following is detailed. The program I'm following detailed the science behind it, as by flooding the biceps and triceps with blood and oxygen, in turn helping to increase the blood flow and flush lactic acid out. The blood also brings nutrients to a pumped muscle. The feeder workouts are usually done with resistance bands. Have you come across this method of training before? And what are your thoughts and opinions on it? He then lists his split. So then we have diet, supplementation and sleep. I average 7.5 hours of sleep every night measured with my Fitbit. I achieve 10,000 steps a day, eat approximately 2.5 to 3,000 calories a day, but I'm not a fan of tracking macros. I have done it for a few weeks and have a good general idea of the food I'm consuming. I drink at least 2 litres of water a day, take an omega-3 and a multivitamin. I supplement with a pre-trainer on days I need a boost. I do suffer from good health, and based on previous recommendations, I went for food intolerance test, and I've been removing the following food from my diet and seen improvements. Monster energy drinks and Diet Coke, pork, onions, juices and apples, wheat, yeast and alcohol. Thanks for reading all this. I appreciate what you do and would be extremely grateful if you could give me some feedback or if I could get a mention on the podcast. Thanks, Stephen.
So I will just mention the bits that you left out, Tom, which is very rude. I'm sure Stephen's going to be very upset. But no, it adds a little bit more context. So his training split is basically Monday is a mass arm day and jiu-jitsu. Leg day is a Tuesday with feeders, which is this arm workout concept that he's doing. Wednesday we've got chest and jiu-jitsu. Again, PM feeders. I'm assuming this is being done at home, maybe in the evening. It doesn't sound like it's sort of taking too long. Thursday, back day. Friday, high volume arm day and jiu-jitsu. Saturday, shoulders and the feeders in the evening. And Sunday, he finally gets a rest. So this feeder workout is 50 hammer curls, 50 tricep extensions, 50 curls, 50 tricep extensions, 50 reverse grip curls, 50 tricep extensions, 50 mixed grip curls, and 50 tricep extensions. That's a whole lot of reps. So let's look at the feeder workout to start with. And so I'm going to look at this mechanistically and kind of shoot back on Tom. Now, the concept of active recovery is very well known in more the kind of endurance realm of training. So, you know, you'll get people that are doing like 50, 60, 70 miles a week running, and they might go out for like a nice relaxed, I wouldn't be relaxed, but a nice relaxed sort of 8-mile run, you know, steady pace, just kind of going through the motions. Whereas, you know, the next day they might be doing a run to a certain tempo, really trying to push themselves, maybe doing intervals, maybe really pushing the distance. So that's where the concept of active recovery is usually. We don't tend to see it in kind of the kind of more hypertrophy, strength-based realm. Now, what you can say is that doing this might enable the body to perform more efficiently. Because if you're just doing something more often, you're going to become more efficient at it. So, for example, I'm doing a lot of snatch technique work at the moment because I'm learning Olympic lifting again. So I'm doing a lot of technical bar work even on the days where I'm not doing the snatch, because, to be honest, it's a good warm-up, it's a good primer, and if I can get more time under the bar, I'm going to get better at the snatch. So it sounds silly, but even if you're going to do more reps with the band on your arms, you're probably going to become more efficient at training that movement, even though it's a really simple movement. So there's probably like a neurological benefit there in terms of becoming more aware of the contraction and the movement. Now, for me, there's not going to be, unless I'm unaware, there's not going to be any direct muscle building effect from flushing a bit of lactic acid out of the arms, and there's probably not going to be that much because the training that you're going to do is not going to produce that much lactic acid. But there's not a direct breakdown effect. So don't get me wrong, there's a volume component here. So either way, there's probably going to be some kind of benefit. But with the amount of work that's going in, so 50, 50, 50, 50, there's a lot of volume there. I'd probably like to see that work and time being spent with greater loads.
Yeah, so I did a little bit of reading before the podcast on this, and it seems like feeder workouts, they probably weren't made up by him, but they were popularised by Rich Piana, which kind of set alarm bells off in my mind a little bit. I would kind of echo a lot of what Ben said in sort of the latter part of that. So what we know, if we want hypertrophy, the things we need are mechanical tension, micro trauma, and metabolite buildup. You're only really achieving one of those with these workouts. So we need to then balance that up with, if we know the main thing that causes growth is progressive overload, so doing your curls heavier, then chucking on an absolute ton of volume every week may potentially reduce your ability to do that, which over time can then sort of cause your gains to taper off a little bit. As you mentioned with the lactic acid thing, it's kind of a myth that lactic acid hangs around after workouts. So lactate is flushed out of the muscle pretty much immediately. It's either used in the Krebs cycle to make energy, or it's sent to the liver and converted into glucose. And then the hydrogen, which is the acidic portion of that, that's flushed out pretty quickly after you finish training. So DOMS isn't caused by a buildup of lactic acid. It's caused by, as I say, the micro trauma and general inflammation, which these feeder workouts probably won't help. So the only other thing really on that is high reps with really low weight can induce hypertrophy. We know this. There's been a few research papers done by Brad Schoenfeld lately. I think he took something like 80% of 1 rep max, I could be wrong on that one, and compared it to 30% of 1 rep max. And both groups got the same amount of growth. The kicker is, though, the people doing the 30% of 1 rep max workouts took those reps to close to failure. And it doesn't sound like you're doing that with a band. And that is a really important facet. So it's not just a case that you can do a ton of volume with a lightweight. You need to make sure that by the end of the set, you can't do any more. And I would suggest that that's maybe not what you're doing. What I would do if you're wanting to focus on your arms, which you're obviously wanting to do, is train them 3 times a week and train them hard. So that would be maybe 2 really difficult days, perhaps Monday, Friday, and then Wednesday you do a bit of a pump after you do chest. But I wouldn't spend all week doing arms, because eventually you are just essentially wasting time.
I'll be honest, I would love to train arms 3 times a week. But I can't, because my arms are already very adequate for the size of my physique. But I'll be honest, 100% up front, as a guy, there is something, for me, very satisfying about a gun day.
See, that's where, I don't know, I think that's where we differ. I probably have quite comparatively small arms because I get really bored really easily. So it's like, if I'm not lifting something really heavy, I'm just like, this is boring. I'm not enjoying myself.
But what if you're lifting something really heavy with your guns?
I can't do that. We've been through this.
One thing I thought about is, obviously when we train, so when you train, you tend to get more muscular hydration and glycogen storage. So muscle tends to look slightly bigger. Let's just say 10, 20%, whatever it is. Now, if I went and did that workout, the chances are I'm going to get this effect short term. So if we trained arms heavy quite often, and then we did these feeder workouts, is there kind of almost like a false sense that we're gaining muscle here because we're actually constantly having a lot more storage within the muscle, and thus people think they're building more muscle, but the chances are when they have a bit of a rest, a lot of that kind of perception fades because a lot of that was actually water and extra glycogen storage?
Yeah, potentially. There's probably some inflammation there as well. Like if you're doing an absolute ton of volume, your muscle is just going to swell up because it's sore. Like if I ever have a week off, I feel like my legs shrink enormously, but it's probably just because they have DOMs all the time. So when that's not there, they do look a little bit smaller. So that could be potentially part of it.
Mm. Oh, well, cool. So the rest of the questions. The other questions were, how do you deal with setbacks in general, and what advice would you have? So, I get injured quite often, like niggly stuff. I play rugby. I got injured at the weekend. Got a compression injury on my calf. I did everything humanly possible, and I was back walking within 2.5 days. So my recovery and what I do is great. Aside from that, I went into the gym on Monday with the full intention of just doing different stuff. So, yeah, great, my leg hurt. I couldn't do that. It was a shame, but I had a plan. Like, even if I, hurt both of my legs badly and I was going to go in and just use machines, again, for me, it it would be a focus shift. Like, there's no point me sitting there. Just nothing positive comes out of it, of me sitting there going, oh, yeah, I can't do that. I'm like, it's just the reality. It's just, I've got to get on with it. So I just try and benefit my body in some other way by focusing on something else. If you've got an injury that's quite debilitating, so a couple of years ago I injured my back, I fully appreciate and really kind of have comfort with people that have injured their back, because it's totally crap. It's actually really debilitating when you injure your back, because it just makes you so nervous about movement, and you're just not good on your feet. Anyway, I remember when I did that, and I said to myself, like, I can't train at the moment. So I literally did like a few bits weight-wise, and then I just tried to do a lot of movement, a lot of walking, and I just focused on some other stuff. I said, right, I can't move right now. What else fires me up in my life? I love reading, love going to the movies. Like, there might have been some stuff that needed doing at home that I could do. Again, I just shift my focus. Right now, training's a big part of my life. Rugby, gym, walking the dog, all that kind of stuff. If that got turned on its head, then I would just have to say to myself, well, what shall I focus on right now? And there's loads of things queuing up at the door that I'm interested in that I can just pick up and crack on with and enjoy. And yes, it's not great that I can't train, but it's just the reality.
Yeah, no, I was pretty much going to say almost all of that anyway. I think it comes back to what we said a couple of podcasts ago, where it's like not defining yourself by your sport. If you only have this one thing that you're doing in your life, then you will be screwed when you inevitably get injured. But just maintain other hobbies, even if they're active hobbies. Like, if I enjoy walking a lot, so on the numerous times that I've been injured, I will generally train a few less times per week, focus on the part of my body that isn't broken, and then I'll go walking instead. It just clears your head. I'm sure most people who listen to this podcast are probably in the same as us, in that you've probably got a shelf full of books you haven't read yet. You've probably got an Audible that's full of books you haven't listened to. Like, you can just crack on with that stuff until you can get back to it, provided, sort of to jump the gun a little bit and answer question 2, you just adjust your diet a little bit to account for the fact you're moving a bit less.
Which was his next question. How do I adapt training and your diet? I think training, you just do what you can. It's as simple as that. I'm a huge fan of getting in the pool if you're injured. I think hydrotherapy is fantastic. When I injure my ankles, I try and get in the pool as quickly as possible and just do some gentle front crawl, because I find that gentle pressure really starts to open up the ankle capsule really quickly. It can be a little bit stiff later on, but for me, injury is about, for me, you want to move it as much as possible, and sometimes you got to go through pain. I remember injuring anterior rotator cuff years ago from doing stupid eccentric loading on a bench press, which it was just stupid anyway. And I really injured the shoulder, and it wasn't getting any better. And I went to a physio, and he said, guess what? I'm going to give you 2 weeks of hell and pain, and then your shoulder's going to be all right. And he basically just gave me a broom handle, and he said, I just need to open out the tissues and release the scar tissue all across the front of your shoulder. So I got a broomstick, and I had a really wide hands, and was obviously putting it behind my back, and I was doing a couple of rotations, a couple of times a day, and it was so painful, and nothing had worked up until now. And he was like, just movement. And within like 2 weeks, my shoulder was feeling so much better, and I just needed to strengthen it again. So sometimes you've got to go through a little bit of pain. And again, when I get injured with rugby, my approach is ice 3-4 times a day. I try and put as much transdermal magnesium as I can on. I find it relaxes the muscle tissue very quickly, in my experience. And then I just try and move. I stretch, I roll. I kind of like, if the tissues aren't too sore, I'll get my thumbs in the tissues and I'll just try and move it around. If anything's too tender, then I'll stay away from that. I won't kind of prod it because it's just sore. There's already too much inflammation there. But I literally just try and do what I can, grip my teeth a little bit with some of the pain, and I recover really quickly.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, a lot of the times when people get injured, they will be told, like, just rest it. Don't move it, just rest it until it's better. And that's really crap advice. So we know just from the different stages of recovery from injuries and from general bone and soft tissue healing that small amounts of movement, I would just say sort of stay within what is tolerable. I wouldn't say comfortable and avoid pain, but don't make it really bad. but stay within sort of a range of motion that's tolerable and just move the affected limb as much as possible to try and, as you say, just increase the rate at which it recovers. With regards to sort of what you can do as well, obviously you've only injured one of your knees, so that means that you could theoretically do things like leg curls, leg extensions with the other leg. There's been a few cool studies on that. There's a big meta-analysis I read today by Carroll et al. From 2006. What they saw was something called contralateral effects. So if you train the non-injured side, during the experiment they saw a 25 to 52% increase in strength in the side that you trained, but then the other side still improved in strength by 7 to 11%, which is really cool. It just shows how your body kind of, it looks after you and it does do what you would expect it to need to do, rather than just saying, oh, only one leg's working, I'll just get that one massive and the other one can stay really weak. So it's not ideal, it's not the same, but it means that if you were to sort of strengthen the other leg as much as is reasonable, then when you are recovered and when you have rehabbed, you'll come back and you'll not feel like a little weak baby bird. You'll actually be able to move things, and then you can speed your own recovery up a little bit further because you'll be able to get straight back to training.
Yeah. Mate, do what you can, always. Just shift focus, stay passionate about something, keep niggling away at it in terms of improving the recovery, improving your potential to be back on your feet quickly, and just embrace stuff.
Spot on.
Right.
That's that one about covered. Right. So, next question. Nice, short and sharp. Hi, Ben. First of all, I like to keep the compliments short and sweet. Awesome podcast. I really appreciate your sensible approach to nutrition and performance. Now to the question. I know you say that you need to get geeky with your nutrition when you're trying to get quite lean. Does this mean you need to count the calories and macros from green vegetables? I know this may seem like a silly question, but there are so many different opinions out there on this, and I would like some clarity on the issue. Obviously, I'm hoping you'll say no to make my life easier, but I will deal with the devastation if you say yes. Cheers. Thanks so much, Danny.
The devastation. You want to get lean, so you firstly need to look at your progress. It's the same with anything. If we're applying a certain system and we are getting the outcome that we want from application of the system, then maybe the system doesn't need to change. We're happy with the results. End of. If you're applying a system and you're not getting the results you want, then we have to be critical. We have to say, what can I change? And if right now you're trying to get lean and you feel your fat loss is being held back and you're not counting an aspect of your diet where you're counting everything else, then you have to say, well, perhaps there's an impact here. Now, some green vegetables are more calorific than you think. Some aren't. Like spinach, you can eat quite a lot of it. There's not a lot going on in it. And that's kind of the same with a lot of the leaves. Take peas, for example, like garden peas, courgette. There's probably a bit more than you anticipate there. So, measure it. Measure a cup. If you had that 3 times a day, you might be having an extra 150, 200 calories that you don't expect. Take someone that's quite small, already quite lean. That could be quite a significant amount of calories that you need to account for.
Yeah. So, in my mind, there's kind of 2 ways that you can approach this, and one of them's yes and one of them's no. So, most people, when they eat vegetables, they'll eat sort of about the same amount of vegetables every day, which generally means that if you're not tracking them, you're being completely inaccurate in your tracking, but you're being inaccurate to a consistent degree. So it means that although, say, for example, you're putting in MyFitnessPal 1,700 calories a day, you might be eating 1,900 calories a day, but it's that same amount every day. So that then, if your fat loss does stall, then you can just adjust that 1,700 calories, keep eating the same amount of vegetables, and your total calorie intake will go down and you'll start making progress. Like, we need to remember why we're trying to track food, and we're trying to track food so that we can change what it is that we're doing so that we can get the goals that we want. We're not tracking food so we've got this document that we can then look back on in 40 years' time and say, oh, this is precisely what I ate on the 17th of June. So it's a tool, and you can use the tool in the way that you want it to. I usually say the same about fish oil. Like, I tell people, just don't bother tracking fish oil. You're going to take it every day, and if you need to reduce your calories, it's not going to be the fish oil that you take out, so you might as well just not track it. If, however, you are wanting to track it, because I eat quite a lot of vegetables at a sitting, so like my vegetable intake probably does tot up about 300 calories a day, which means that over the course of a day, if I'm dieting, that could make a big difference, especially if I'm having a Sunday dinner and I'll suddenly eat loads more vegetables than I even normally would. So I would just say track something. So if you're going in MyFitnessPal and you're having vegetables on a meal, what I usually tell clients to do is just put 200 grams of broccoli in. Then you put something in your MyFitnessPal. That won't be precise, but 100 grams of broccoli is 35 calories. So worst case scenario, that's how far out you'll be, and it won't really matter.
Nice. Very true. Right, my friend, the last question.
Cool. Give me a second and I will get to it.
We haven't got a second, Tom. Come on, snappity snap, choppity chop.
Slave driver. Hi Ben, Tom. This is the first one that's been addressed to me. It's awesome. I don't know where to start. Your podcasts have been so important to me and helping me get through the toughest part of my life at the moment. I'm a 22-year-old female and Exeter psychology graduate. There's some big words there, man. 22-year-old female and Exeter psychology graduate. I've always been a lover of sport, especially football, having played at county level and for my university. I've always had body confidence issues and couldn't look at myself in the mirror even though I was slim. I started getting into health and fitness in my second year at uni, which continued, and I became almost obsessed with working out and eating well in my third year. I would do a combination of HIIT workouts as well as 6K runs onto a football training. It became silly, where I wouldn't allow myself to eat unless I'd worked out that day and would only eat clean, heavily avoid carbs and think they were bad, and it would make me fat and feel guilty if I didn't work out. I even tried those stupid T-Tox or Fit Teas thinking they would give me abs. Oh dear. So, the typical over-exercising and under-eating. I went from 9.5 to 8 stone, but because I was getting leaner and strong, definition of my body, I didn't stop. I lost my menstrual cycle, and still have, but I started to get confidence from how I looked. So even when friends say you should calm down, I wouldn't listen and hope to achieve the perfect body. I started having knee pain throughout my exercising, but ignored it. In fairness, I had seen physios and doctors at uni, but they said with a bit of rest it would calm down. It was only intermittent and wasn't enough to stop my exercising long term. Long story short, my knee pain continued to persist after graduation. I rested and dramatically reduced my workouts. MRIs diagnosed chondromalacia patella. That's the word that I managed to read properly. Having seen 3 different consultants and tried everything from foot orthodontics, muscle strengthening, etc., as well as having physiotherapy for 5 months, and it didn't help. As of November 2016, the issue became chronic, and the nauseating pain has been constant ever since. It flared up majorly despite no exercise in December, and it's still a major issue as I am in constant pain. I've had to leave my job, can't sleep, and struggle every day. I've had to resort to antidepressants, pain psychologists and CBT counselling, but I'm currently undergoing more scans and under the care of a specialist in London, so I'm hoping that this strange issue, with nothing fundamentally wrong with my knee, will be sorted. I discovered your podcast back in September 2016, and they really helped me to lift my day on lonely walks at the moment and keep my love of health and fitness alive, so I can't thank you enough. I'm now planning to do a Masters in 2018 on sports psychology when hopefully all healed, as 2017 will be a bit of a stretch for me. Anyway, I guess this is related to the previous podcast in Ben's view that everything happens for a reason. As much as I would kill to, I can't change the past, and clearly my body was under constant stress for a solid year, and it has majorly backfired. I'm asking whether you guys think there should be more of a focus on the issue of how to avoid obsession with exercise and taking fitness to the extreme, as it's so easy to get addicted to it without realising what the consequences might be and the potential harm you could be causing your body. I, like so many, was a victim of getting brainwashed by false areas of the fitness industry on social media. I even used others as a guideline as to how much exercise you had to do. For example, I thought, though I have a great respect for the body coach if you know him, I followed his guidelines without realising that clearly all those HIIT workouts were too much for my body. How do you think we can avoid this in the future? What do you think needs to be done? I feel we need more education available to help people understand these types of consequences when they first get into improving their health and fitness. Thank you so much again. You're helping to change lives and promote a healthy mindset from people, including me. The best podcast duo there will ever be. Sorry for such a long question. I hope you get my gist. Love, Harriet.
Well, Harriet, I hope your knee heals up and you get back on track. And good luck with your masters as well, because that is really awesome. A masters is I don't think a masters or a PhD is in me anymore. I did think about it when I was at uni, but just man, them essays they got me. You know what? I was going to answer this question by saying I think there is an awful lot of education, but then, to be honest, is there enough education around the problem that we are essentially discussing, and that is sort of managing how much goes in? So fitness has traditionally been guidelines based around doing stuff. So going to the gym, performing an action and eating a food, and no one's really said all of this stuff is good, but there is a dose dependent response. Like, you know, I remember seeing a thread in our Body Type Nutrition Foundation community today where Tom and the students were talking about exercise affecting NEAT. So the exercise that we do affecting our energy expenditure maybe like the next day. So if you feel sore, you won't move as much the next day, and then your calorie expenditure goes down. And again, it's that dose dependent response. Like, are we doing too much at a particular point in time which causes us to do less at a different point in time? Does it affect negatively our well-being? If it does, then we have to kind of self-assess this. But the problem is this is where the kind of, I suppose, the dangerous side of fitness ensues, because the image that we see on social media with an awful lot of people is the do. Like, I'm going to the gym, I'm eating the food, I'm doing this, and all you see is the doing all the time rather than the rest and the recovery and the recuperation and those kind of strategies that are supporting the doing. When I teach in my seminars, I get people to really think about what it is that they do in their life and why that they do it. So we can look and aspire to elite and amazing athletes, and that's all cool. Like, I'm inspired by great people, but you got to remember that even like CrossFitters, for example, their day is built around their training and recovery. Like, my day is not built on my training and recovery. Like, I have an awful lot of scope and I think I do pretty well. You know, I work from home, I'm in charge of most of my hours in my day. So I do get a lot of recovery processes on board. But you think of the average 35-year-old, male or female, they've potentially got 2 kids, a busy job, a lack of sleep. They've got all these things that puts them into a suboptimal state. So for that person, 3 days a week training hard might be their capacity, because their body is already under so much load to just generally recover from. Take that person and, you know, let's actually go back to when I was at uni. I remember going out at uni 3, 4, 5 times a week and getting shit-faced. And then getting up early and doing my work and going to the gym and then playing rugby. I absolutely trashed my body. Didn't have much stress, had loads of time for recovery. The body was obviously younger, so it was more efficient, it was better recovery. My capacity was vastly kind of improved. So when I teach this stuff, I just try and get people to say, like, just there's not a right or a wrong answer here. There's just what is within your capacity and the outcome that you want. And just know that sometimes things might happen a little bit slower. Now, to come back to the original question, yes, I do think there is much education to be done. I think hopefully this podcast and a lot of what I do and what we do at Body Type Nutrition is getting the right kind of message out there. We're teaching people about balance, and balance isn't just about like fluffy stuff like yoga and meditation. Balance is just about having enough time to do things that you want to do and feel fresh and feel recuperated, but also train and get a training effect to look good and perform good. And it's a fine balance, and hopefully we can empower people enough to just listen. I was having a conversation with someone on Instagram this morning, and I posted a photo of me with my top off, which is something I rarely do. And I want to show people that I walk the talk, I behave the way that I talk and teach. And, you know, a couple of people said, what body fat percentage are you? And I said, you know what? I honestly don't know, and I don't care. Everything that I do as a person is based on look and feel. I'll get up one day and I will self-assess how I look and how I feel, and I will change things. And for a lot of people, that's not enough. They need like a number. They need a thing to rely on, and I want people to just be able to listen to them. If your body is screaming at you to say rest, just rest. Eat 300 calories less today to account for the rest that you've just had. And when we can get to that kind of intuitive place, I think it's a very empowering place to be.
Yeah, I totally agree there. I mean, I think part of the problem is that, like, the whole moderate amount of exercise thing is really difficult to sell. So you'll see people on Instagram who, they train twice a day, 6 days a week. The late Rich Piana popularized the 8-hour arm workout, where it's just like do as much as humanly possible. And it gets to the point where exercising all the time becomes almost like a socially acceptable addiction. Like, if you see someone that's addicted to gambling or smoking or drinking or something, people kind of look down on them. But I think due to what Harriet says and just kind of the lack of education around this topic, it gets to the point where someone who is addicted to exercise is kind of revered as almost like a role model. And I personally I don't blame social media, but I don't think it helps. I think it's an easy get out to just blame social media and have it as that boogeyman, but it definitely doesn't play very well into the situation. I mean, we know the mechanism behind the whole thing. So exercise releases dopamine. The amount of dopamine that's released is higher in some individuals than others. So some people won't get a response, like a reward response from training at all, which is partially why some people don't exercise. And then some people get a reward to exercise to a massive degree, and these are the people who are susceptible to this. And it's just really difficult to kind of break the cycle if you're not aware of it. I mean, I would say that there is definitely people who are just dedicated and who enjoy their training a lot. So I would say that, I mean, there's specific criteria for addiction, and one of the criteria is that it impacts on your life negatively and you keep doing it anyway. So if you're exercising to a high amount and it's not negatively affecting your life, you still got a social life, you're still healthy, then it might just be a case that you train a lot. Like, that's okay. You see ultramarathon runners, I read an article about an ultramarathon today. Like, they train an insane amount per week, but that's not necessarily a problem. It's only a problem when it becomes one. But that is where, as you say, that the education needs to be there that exercise is a legitimate addiction to some people. Not a chemical addiction, but it is a behavioural one. And it can become really problematic. Like, the WHO recommend 30 minutes of exercise 5 days a week as a minimum. Ideally 60 minutes of moderate intensity exercise, or 90 minutes of intense exercise per week, plus 2 resistance training sessions. It's not a lot. It's a dog walk and 2 lifting sessions per week, and that is all that is needed to avoid most of the cardiovascular issues that are, like, dogging the West. And as I just said at the start, that's a really hard position to sell because it's not that exciting.
I think with rest, the big thing that I see, and I've had it when I was younger, don't have it anymore, is just a general anxiety that something bad's going to happen. And you got to think about, let's just look at fat loss. Like, for the body to change, it actually takes quite a long period of time. Like, you know, if you want to lose a stone, like, realistically, at 2 pounds a week fat loss, that's going to take you 7+ weeks, realistically. So, you know, fat loss and fat gain is a slow process. So if you say to yourself, do you know what, I'm going to take 3 days off. In the grand scheme of things, fat loss or gain, nothing's going to happen, really. But mentally, physically, emotionally, so much can happen. Like, I know when I take a 3-day weekend, which I like to do now and again, you know, that Friday, Saturday, Sunday off of just not thinking and doing and stuff is just so restorative. And again, that's why we take holidays and time off. So the effect of those 3 days of rest and how that's now going to affect your ongoing weeks, you just can't really put a price to that. But you've got to be really objective. So, like, nothing really bad's going to happen in those 3-4 days, but something in terms of your fat and your weight, but something great can happen to you mentally, physically, and emotionally. And I think that's what people need to buy into.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I can't remember who said it, but someone said something a while ago to me, and it was like, if you're not in the shape that you want to be in 5 years' time, it won't be because you didn't train today. Like, it's massively like cumulative effect over an enormous expanse of time. And if you take off 5 days in September that you wouldn't have ordinarily taken off, come 2020, you'll not be in any different of a shape than if you'd have trained.
We've also got to look at the potential to push the body. So if you're never in a place where you can push the body, like let's say you're walking into the gym today and you're feeling 80%, you've got to ask yourself, am I able to push the body? Am I able to stimulate the process of adaptation? The chances are, if that's no, then how much actual benefit are you going to get from that session? And I'm talking from a performance perspective. Like if you burn calories and have a net loss, then you're going to lose weight. But from a performance perspective, you might not get stronger. You might not get bigger. You might not get faster or fitter. So actually resting efficiently and being able to go into the gym and literally smash the gym, whether your session is 10 minutes or 10 hours, you need the rest to be able to push to then get the adaptation to then look, feel and move better.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the old thing that came from like the endurance sport realm, where it's like if you do too much training, it's just called junk miles, where it's just you do this additional volume that just eats into recovery and eats into what your body needs in order to improve for no additional benefit whatsoever. So there's definitely diminishing returns, and it just comes to a point of finding it.
Right, Tom, better wrap up the show.
Better wrap up.
People are falling asleep. Right, thank you everyone for tuning in. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honour. I hope you've learned something. If you've enjoyed the show, then please share it with someone. If you think someone could be struggling with a potential problem that we've discussed today, tag them in the social media post, send it to them, give them the gift of knowledge and inspiration, because that is an awesome thing. If you want your question to be answered on the show, then please email bencoomber@gmail.com with the subject line podcast. Myself and Tom will be back on the show in 3 weeks, so we will be back on episode 281, where we're going to talk about more questions, and then we're also going to talk about what we both are currently reading. So Tom, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ben. Thanks everyone for listening.
And we will see you very soon. In the meantime, stay awesome. Goodbye. Hey everyone, Vancouver Radio, episode number 276.